What I learned is successful people are willing to do what unsuccessful people are not. So I'm successful because I'm willing to do what you ain't willing to do. I'm willing to get up early. I'm willing to stay late. I'm willing to do that over again. And when I don't feel like doing it, I get up and I do it again. And that difference between me and you. I'm gonna keep going when I don't feel like going. You wanna go as long as it's comfortable and convenient. But then you wonder why you ain't got what I got. You ain't going where I'm going.
Welcome to Closing Gap Podcast, Truth About Wealth. I'm your host, Mr. Eddie Richardson, here with our host and the owner of Hamilton Wealth Advisors, Mr. Wilbert Hamilton. How you doing today, my friend?
I am blessed and highly favored.
Amen. That's always great to hear those words of being highly favored and blessed and highly favored. And we want to let all of you know that you too are blessed and highly favored because you are able to hear, tune in, watch, however you are engaging with us today, another episode of Closing the Gap Podcast, where we give you the truth about wealth. And the truth is, we know that a lot of people are struggling, but in the midst of your struggle, you still have the tools to be able to help somebody else get over troubled waters. We are treading water right now at this current stage of our economic lives and what's going on in society. And, you know, that's really the bane of our existence in this world. Is there's always something that comes up and always something that comes to, knock us down. As the Bible says, the devil comes to steal, kill, and destroy. And I'm not going to try to say who the devil is right now, but there's a lot of stealing, a lot of killing, a lot of destroying that is happening in society right now in all ways, shapes, and forms. And especially as we talk here on this podcast, we talk about faith and finance. And as we see our finances dwindling as a result of what's going on in society, it causes us to lose faith in what we are able to do, what we have the capacity to achieve. And also it stunts our growth in finances of what we believe we're able to do for the next generation as well. But on this episode, we want to let everybody know that, you need to lean in on some of the things that used to happen in our community, right? The work that our foreparents did. We were talking before we started this episode about how in our community, especially at churches and different things, you say had a lot of people that sold plates.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? Back in the day, and how they would sell plates to help those in the community, to be able to take care of whatever the situation may be. It may be a funeral, right? So, somebody may not have had insurance. So the community got out and put in the work to make sure that this person had a respectable funeral, a decent burial. Also, if you had a kid that was graduating high school, and their parents were less fortunate in that community, where the people in the church rallied around them and sold some fish plates, barbecue plates, or whatever the case may be, to make sure that kid had what they needed to be able to go to college, or if they were starting a job somewhere and needed some help getting off the ground. Well, we came together and put in the necessary work to build a bridge to help them get from point A to point B.
It's always ironic, and my mom has my boys down in Montgomery for the weekend, and me and my wife took a little getaway trip to get out of town, and kind of late birthday present to me, from her. And she had my boys down in Pine Hill. She took them down to Pine Hill, Alabama, back to where she comes from, back to where, a lot of my family still is and whatnot. And, just get them a taste of home. And, she sent me some pictures of what they were doing while they were down there. And, they had to, pick a few peas, had to shuck some corn, they got on the tractor. They did a little bit of work, while they were there, but it was good to see them enjoying the work, enjoying the things that, that I used to do, the places, obviously where I come from. So, to give them a little taste of home, so to speak. And, you were just talking about, some of the things we used to do when it comes to, selling plates. And mom was one of those people, she sold plates. And, like I said, I done laid bowl wax paper, cut more slices of pound cake than I care to remember, growing up, because that was her, side hustle. That's how she made a little extra money on the side. She would make her barbecue place and chicken and ribs and potato salad and baked beans and that good, that good sliced pound cake. So but that was her way, and that was, cooking has always been her love language. And that's how she kind of gave back, and that's how she spread love, throughout, the community by, kind of sharing her passion with other people. And, her gift also made room for her. Her gift was able to help fund some things. It helped, of course, get me some school clothes from time to time. Help, us maybe take a vacation too that maybe we wouldn't have been able to go on. It may have helped pay for, her to get an insurance policy, to be able to afford certain things. And, I would have known that obviously I was just a kid at the time, and I didn't know the situation financially my parents were in. And I always knew they worked and obviously were doing, pretty well for themselves, but they always were working, always doing something. They didn't just rely on that one, paycheck. They always were doing something else on the side. And just that worker's mentality, and that stick to it mentality, and that, that being unafraid of, doing a little manual labor, of getting your hands dirty a little bit and doing what's necessary, to hopefully build that bridge of, helping her kids go a little bit further. And at the end of the day, I know that's something that we all seek to do. We all trying to build a bridge, to hopefully have our children one day cross it. And the goal is hopefully they build a bridge for their kids and their kids' kids. And, at the end of the day, I think the biggest thing that, I took away from was just that the work ethic and desire to, not put yourself in a situation where you're always relying upon somebody else. Control what you can control. Like, my dad always told me, say, you can always control how hard you work. You might not can control where you work all the time, but you can always control how hard you work when you're there. And if you put in the work when you there, wherever you at, somebody's going to notice.
Yeah.
Somebody's going to take account of it in some kind of way. You're going to get blessed for it. So I think, if nothing else, I want our community to get back to that sense of pride in our work. Because I truly believe that that's when your gift starts to make room for you, when you're taking pride in what you're doing. A lot of us, sometimes we tend to think that certain work is beneath us, or, we've outgrown doing certain things. And, every now and then you got to, like I say, you gotta get your hands in the mud. You gotta get a little dirty. Every now and then you gotta get on your hands and knees and pull the weeds with your hand out the ground. You gotta go in there and, you gotta plant them flowers yourself, and, you gotta feel the earth a little bit, to kind of have that come to Jesus meeting. Say, okay, you know what? I still know what this feels like. This is a reminder of, maybe who you used to be. And I think a lot of times, we probably need a reminder or refresher course.
Yeah.
Because a lot of times we get, let's just say, get too big for your britches a little bit. And all of a sudden you get, too good to do certain things. And, at the end of the day, the things that made us are usually the things that keep us. And while we're building a bridge for our kids financially in a lot of ways, I do feel like in some ways, maybe we're not building that same bridge when it comes to the accountability, the alignment, that work ethic that they need to be able to maintain. And right now, it's funny that, we feel like, most people feel like there's no way to turn, and we feel like the government is kind of letting us down. And every time we look around, and if nothing else, it looked like God is just sounding the alarm for us, saying, look here, you've been here, you've been dependent on everybody but me. And I'm putting you in a situation where now it ain't nothing that's for you to do but turn and come home. The only thing left for you to do is turn and come to me. And unfortunately, it feels like things have to get worse before they get better, in a lot of different ways. But a lot of times it's the way life works. We don't, a lot of times we don't want to sit down and have that conversation with God until we get to the point where we ain't got no choice. But he's been sounding that alarm way before then. But we just turned a blind eye. We didn't want to listen. We wanted to act like we didn't hear him calling us, and, hey, hold on, stop. Don't go no further. We just keep on moving, because it's what we want to do and how we want to proceed. But, right now, God is sounding the alarm, and, we're in trying times, as we can see, with things that are going on, not just here, but also abroad and all the way around the world. And like I said, we ain't gonna talk about the devils, but like I say, the Bible says the devil came to kill, steal, and destroy. And we can see all that right in front of us today.
Yeah. It's taking shape, it's taking form, and it's impeding our progress, And I was having a conversation with a young man that came into the barbershop about discipline and how to move forward. And he was very inquisitive about how could he get himself on the right track. Right. And so it was a moment of building a bridge for me in that conversation, like many conversations in the barbershop are, especially with those that are younger than me, being able to share with them what I've seen, what I've gone through in order to help them, that they don't have to go through what I've been through, but just take some of the wisdom from my experience. And as I was speaking to the young man, I shared with him that the way that you progress properly is through prayer, because prayer to God helps you stay focused, helps you stay on track. And that's what in fact gives you the power that you need to move forward, to progress through any situation. And so as we are striving to proceed in life, and we have all this impending doom that builds walls to stunt our growth, stunt our progress, and oftentimes even as we progress, it pushes us back, right? It tries to push us back into places that we thought we had been delivered from, or thought we had come out from. Well, when we pray and submit to God, God then empowers us again with what we need to be able to continue to move forward. It gives us the proper alignment to move forward, because in an alignment, we get out of alignment, not sometimes because of us, but then other times it's because of our surrounding.
Yes.
What's going on around us gets us off the right track, or the right path, or the righteous path of God. But when we constantly pray and submit ourselves to God, we're able to have a greater sense of clarity, to be able to see what's going on, and then to be able to have the right direction of where to go, right? Sometimes I had this, thing as I'm driving in my neighborhood. There's a couple of ways on one of the turns that I can go to the light, maybe the quickest way for me to get on the road, and then another route that takes me to a stop sign may be quicker. And when I get to the intersection, I always try to have my mind focused and see, okay, Spirit, is the light gonna change quicker, or is it gonna be quicker to go to the stop sign? Right? And the Spirit never fails me to tell me which way to go. Sometimes I just get a little stubborn and take one route other than the other, right? But what that tells me is that as long as I stay in submission to God and listen to God for my direction, then God will lead me in the right direction and tell me which is the best route to go. And that's what we want for all of our listeners as well, is that as we move forward in life, and we're talking about building bridges for others, is that we recognize the bridge that has been built for us from the generation prior to us, that put in the work ethic for not only themselves, but for the community. Because as you said, your mother sold place as a means of having more funds for herself, but also, as we talked about, it was also a means to take care of those that were in the church and in the community as well. So it wasn't just for you and your family, but also in addition to that, she utilized those funds to help the people. And likewise, my father and my mother would do that for the church that he pastored. He would go get the grill, go set up in a spot, and would barbecue to help raise some funds for the church, right? For whatever the needs were of the church, whatever that is, right? Go down the laundry list, and whatever it is, as we raised the money, brought it back to the church, and then the church decided what those funds would be used for. And it wasn't about begging, it was about work ethic.
Yes.
And now many of us in our community, we have the GoFundMe mentality.
Yes.
That all we want to do is, and there's nothing wrong with asking, right? Because I do believe, as the scripture says, you have not because you ask not. right? So there's nothing wrong with asking. And
Also
I'm
say
not
faith without works
is dead.
So
there you go.
don't be
So,
asking
yeah,
if you ain't
don't
working.
have faith. Right. So it is, but a lot of times we have a beggar's mentality in our asking. We don't have the faith to believe that God will supply. We don't have the work ethic that is necessary to get what we need. Because a lot of times, even when we ask, we don't receive because God has provided an opportunity for us to work and achieve and get what we needed before we got into the situation where we were falling, where we were failing. And so as a result, when we start begging and start just asking and don't get it, well, it's because prior to that, God had gave you an open door. God had provided an opportunity for you to get what was necessary to take care of your family or your community. And that's what we come week in and week out on this show to talk about, right? Giving people the opportunity to make righteous decisions with your finances, to seek out the professionals in Hamilton Wealth Advisors to align your finances in the manner in which is going to build the necessary bridge for you to get to retirement and for the generations after you to be able to live a life better than how you live. And then understanding that in order to build that bridge properly, you need the wisdom. And the only way that you can get the proper wisdom to build the correct bridge is through prayer and supplication and surrendering to God. And that's why we promote Hamilton Wealth Advisors for the place for you to get your financial advisement. And we also offer New Grace Covenant Church for the place to get your spiritual, your faith advisement. See, we here at Closing the Gap, we truly strive to live by the name of this podcast. We want to close the gap in your faith and your relationship between you and God. And then also we want to close the gap between you and your finances so that you can have what you need for you, but also have more for you and your family as well. And that's very important that we are willing to put in that type of work. As Wilbur said, faith without works is dead. You can believe that you have what you need. You can believe that you have the ability to achieve more. But if you are not willing to put in the simple phone call to Hamilton Wealth Advisors, to go on the website and schedule an appointment with Hamilton Wealth Advisors, then nothing is going to change in your life. If you are not willing to gather in a community of faithful believers in Jesus Christ to get the guidance and the community that you need to help you be able to have a better relationship with God, then nothing is going to change spiritually in your life. If you are not praying to God, then you are not going to have the proper progress that you need to move forward because you are not putting in the proper work. And so we want everybody to understand that in order to get where we need to go, you have to fully surrender to God so that God can provide you the guidance that is necessary. Because, Wilbur, I believe, and I know this without a shadow of a doubt, that all of us are God's creation, and God is constantly communicating to all of us. But we have not aligned ourselves properly with the right community. We have not aligned ourselves properly by praying and talking to God, and then also in prayer, listening to God as well. And as a result of that, I can tell by the accountability, the receipts that's being produced, because your receipt tells how much work you put in.
Absolutely.
The receipt says how much you paid, how much you sacrificed. And there are a lot of blank receipts that a lot of people have right now. And that's why we have bridges that have been built that lead to nowhere. But we want to help you build a bridge that will help you get over the troubled waters and be able to live a life of success. And we're going to talk a little bit more about that when we come back from this break. Welcome back to Closing the Gap Podcast, Truth About Wealth. And today we're talking about building bridges, bridges for us to get to next phase of life that we need personally, but then also for the generation to come after us to be able to get to where they need to go. It's important that we put in the necessary work for not only ourselves, but those that come behind us, because as Wilbert said in the first segment, faith without works is dead. And Hebrews 11:1 says, it tells us what faith is, that faith is the substance of things hoped for and the evidence of things not seen. And while we have hope, and that's where our faith is rendered, and we don't see it yet, well, it can be actualized. And that's what we're talking about now. Is to build a bridge means that we see the gap, we see the chasm that is here. That's why we talk about closing the gap, right? We see the gaps in our lives. We see the gaps, the wealth gap between, our ethnic group and other ethnic groups. We see the gap that happened between our parents and us, right? From transference of wealth. But also what we need to see is the tools that they left us will actually help us close those gaps. The tools that our parents gave us in selling the plates, the fish plates, the barbecue plates, that type of work ethic is what we need to use now to be able to build a different bridge, because they helped bridge us from the troubled waters that they saw.
Yes.
Now we're seeing a new set of troubled waters, and it's incumbent upon us to build a new type of bridge to help people go forward now. And that's going to take a little bit more, Wilbur, than selling fish plates and barbecue plates.
Yeah, a whole lot more. Because as we can see, due to inflation and everything going on around us, everything is a whole lot more expensive than it used to be.
Yeah.
That fish plate or that barbecue plate that used to be $5 a plate back in the day. That same plate probably $15 now. But that inflation hit everything. So we know that yesterday's price is not today's price. And we have to understand that in everything that we're doing. And it's ironic that the chaos that we see going on around us, and even with our government, the very government that made us dependent upon them, it made us reliant upon them, is taking those same benefits away and now leaving us with nothing. And that's obviously that's by design. That there's nothing happens by chance. All of this is an orchestrated plan to a certain extent. But luckily we got access to the plan and creator. So he's the ultimate, planner. He's the ultimate, guide. He has the ultimate roadmap, and he's already told us, hey, look, hey, I can lay your pathway out, and I can make it straight. So, we have to, trust and lean into him. And that's why we come to, people all the time and say, look, in order to close the gap and to be able to build a bridge, you must first come to him. At the end of the day, I don't care what you want to get right in your life. I don't care if it's your finances, obviously your faith, if it's your family, whatever it is, you got to surrender to him first. If you surrender to him first, everything else will fall in line. But you got to surrender to him first. And, understanding that, as things have changed and evolved around us, and obviously the cost of everything has gotten a lot more expensive, from one generation to the next. Understanding how to build that bridge, and understanding how to, utilize simple tools such as life insurance, to help, build a bridge. My parents, I talked about my mother came out of, Pine Hill, Alabama, and my dad came from Montgomery. And, obviously they would say they came from, very humble beginnings, one out the projects and one out the field. So, that's where they come from. So that it wasn't a lot of, bridge building going on from a financial standpoint. But the work that was done by their parents gave them the opportunity to move forward and build an educational bridge, I like to call it. They were able to go, to college, go to Alabama State and, receive a degree and, receive an opportunity to go forward and make something of themselves and get jobs, be able to take care of their families. And it put them in a position to now be able to start the bridge building process from a financial standpoint. And it allowed them to start doing retirement planning. It allowed them the opportunity to start, investing in their 401k and in the TSP and in their, just savings in their, bank accounts when, grandmama and granddad, they had no savings at the bank. Everything was, in a little tin can, little folded tin can. It's some money under the mattress. I ain't know the one that those mother folks, saw the folded tin cans hanging around the house like, well, that Crown Royal bag, they kept a little money in. So, that was, that was the bank, for us back in those days and during those times, for our, parents. So, understanding that, and it's every generation's job to go further. I'm able to, obviously stand on my parents' shoulders the same way they were able to stand on their parents' shoulders. So I have an opportunity to have, gone even further from an educational standpoint, be able to, you learn more. I've been, pushed into an arena where I've had options and access that they didn't have. And understanding that now, I said, well, now I can take that information, those resources back to them and say, hey, you know what, mom, dad, this is how you help build an even bigger bridge than what you've already built. So your parents passed on education to you.
Yeah.
Now you did pass on education to me, but now we can pass on some education and some finances because you received an inheritance in the form of education. Now you can pass on the inheritance in the form of education and finance. Now I'll be able to pass on education, finance, and now opportunity. Because we have to have all of those things in order to put ourselves in a better situation. See, we complain about a lot in our community because we don't create our own opportunities. We're always waiting for opportunities to be created for us. But if we started to do a better job with the planning process and started to help build our own bridges, now we can start to create our own opportunities. Because if I'm left in inheritance and I've shown my parents how to leave and multiply what they're going to leave to me, my brother, my sister. And now they're going to leave more than what they probably ever thought or dreamed of. Because I'm pretty sure they really ain't think about leaving us nothing. That wasn't the goal because they didn't come from that background. It's not like they don't want to do.
Right.
Number one, they never thought about doing it, then didn't know how to do. So now that I'm here, I'm able to show them, hey, you know what? These are some things you can do. That doesn't hurt you or hinder your lifestyle. You still can live the life that we want you to live. But in addition to that, because of your hard work, because of the labor that you put in, we're able to take the gifts that you've received and now we can multiply it. Now there's this thing called life insurance that allows you to leverage the gift and the benefit. You get to pay a little bit today. That's going to pay off a whole lot. Hopefully not tomorrow, but somewhere in the future. And that's the way it works. It's a leverage game. It's I'm going to pay a little bit of money over a long period of time that's going to yield a great result for my kids, my kids' kids, and to leave them in a better situation financially where we no longer have to do the fish plates, where hopefully we don't have to do the GoFundMes because we put ourselves in a situation where now we have the assets and the resources to not just bury somebody and put them in the ground, but to maintain a lifestyle. And that's where a lot of people, fall short in not having the proper education, understanding of what life insurance is really even created to do. It wasn't created to put you in the ground. It was created to be able to leverage and maintain lifestyles, to transfer wealth from one generation to the next, because most people don't understand that the only asset that transfers from one generation to the next, totally non-taxable, is life insurance. If you transfer real estate, there's still property taxes. If you transfer investments, it's capital gains taxes. But with life insurance, the death benefit that pays out is totally non-taxable. So we have to think about, okay, you know what? How do I help build a bridge? And now I can build a bigger bridge. Now I can build a bridge and have some rails on it. I can build a bridge that's big enough for my family and yours. I can start to build multiple bridges because I want to bless generations to come. But I got to understand how to do that. I got to understand, first and foremost, why I need this insurance. And you need it if you believe what I believe. The Bible says a righteous man leaves his inheritance to his children's children. And what is the most effective way to leave that inheritance? Is utilizing life insurance. That is the most effective way. I'm not going to say that's the only way, but it is the most effective way. So we have to understand and utilize the gifts and opportunities that have been provided to us to put ourselves and our families in a better situation. So once we start looking at it and said, okay, well, we have to ask ourselves a simple question. Why does the African American community own the least amount of life insurance as opposed to every other demographic? It's usually because we haven't been properly educated on the uses of life insurance. We think of all of it as just money in case somebody dies, when it's so much more. If, God forbid, somebody were to pass away and they have a child that's, 2 and 4, and they make $100,000 a year, and that means that those children are going to be in the house until they're at least 18 years of age. And in most cases, if they're going to college, they're going to be in your pocket till at least 22 to 24.
Correct.
And anybody with kids understand exactly what I mean. They know they're going to be in your pocket in some way, shape, form, or fashion. So, God forbid, if something were to happen to that husband or that wife that's making $100,000 a year, or let's just say they're making $50,000 a year, and we know that youngest child is 2 years old, that's 16 more years that child was going to be in the home. So at just 10 years, that's $500,000. And we're talking about 16 years? That's another $300,000. So that's $800,000 alone just to maintain the standard of living. That's not past 18. That's just getting them at the house.
Right.
But that's not putting them in a situation where they can go forward. You have not built a bridge in that situation for them to move on and be successful in life. You've given them a chance. But we don't want just a chance, do we? We want a for sure guaranteed opportunity. And we can provide that if we build a big enough bridge. So if that evaluation is done properly and that husband or wife gets the right amount of life insurance, and God forbid something happens, and instead of leaving 800,000, now all of a sudden just say they leave 1.6 million. Now that's enough to carry everybody through high school. That's enough to carry them through college, and hopefully have some money left over at the end of the day. It's especially if that money should be invested properly, especially with someone like Hamilton Wealth Advisors, we can show you how to put it to work. But now we know how to incrementally utilize these funds. We know how to leverage. We know how to layer these assets, and we know how to set up multiple pots of money where this is going to be long-term, short-term, intermediate. These are how we're going to invest these funds. So now that the family is still taken care of, now we still have money to help get them to grad school, because we don't want to just get them out the house.
Right.
We want to get them to a situation where they live a better life than us, because as a parent, I think we can all agree that we want our kids to do better than us.
Yeah.
We want them to go further than us.
True.
We want to give them a greater opportunity in life than what we had.
True.
So if we want them to have a better life than the life that we have, that means that we probably need to do a little bit more than what we've already done. We got to go a little bit further. Whatever you do for yourself, you got to do a little bit more for them. So we have to start pushing ourselves to do more and be better. This is what the previous generations have already done. The previous generations pushed themselves further for our equality, correct? To fight for our rights to vote. My mama went further. She didn't just get a job. She got a job and then she still sold plates on the side so she could go further, so she could do more. So I could have that car at 16. So I could get those new Jordans when they came out. So I could get, the Tommy Hilfiger back in the day. So I could wear the nice clothes and the nice shoes, and I could look good on picture day. So I could be proud of what I wore and what I had on. She didn't have to do that. She could have said, you know what, I'm going to go to Walmart and get your clothes from there. I'm going to save all my money for me. She wouldn't have been wrong for doing that.
Right.
That was her choice. But she said, I want to give my kids a little bit more. I didn't have. And there's nothing wrong with giving your kids what you didn't have. But she made sure to give me what she did. So I spent those summers like my sons got a chance to go down to Pine Hill. I spent some summers down there in the sun, picking peas and shucking corn, carrying watermelon, having to do some work, and having to do some manual labor, having to go slaughter them hogs and do some different things that most people are like, man, what are you talking about? But it was just work. It was what you did. And pretty soon you learn and you understood that work is just a part of life. The sooner you get comfortable with the work that life requires, the much better off your life is going to be.
Yeah.
Because see, on far too many occasions, we want to resist the work. And like I was told a long time ago, everything you want is on the other side of hard.
Yeah. And see, we want everybody to feel a conviction from what we're saying, right? We're not trying to condemn anybody about where you are or where you are not. But it's our responsibility, as our theme this year is about alignment and accountability. We want to make sure that your finances are aligned with where you desire your family to be, and to make sure that we hold you accountable as accountability partners, as Hamilton Wealth Advisors, and as pastor of New Grace Covenant Church, that you have somebody that that you can call, you can have necessary conversations with, to see where you are, and know that this is a no judgment zone, that no matter where you are, we care and we're concerned, and we will help you get to where you desire to be, without condemning you about where you are. So taking an honest assessment based on what Wilbert has said, take a look at your life insurance policies if you have them. Or let me back up, if you don't have them, right? Then let's put in a phone call, set an appointment with Hamilton Wealth Advisors to discuss where you need to be in regards to life insurance policies. We know that there have been some mishandling of life insurance policies in the past, and we know that has caused some mistrust with certain insurance agents and everything. But that's why we come on this show week after week, and we are present. As I said, our theme this year is about alignment and accountability. Wilbert Hamilton and Hamilton Wealth Advisors are accessible to you. You can hold them accountable to make sure that your finances are where they need to be, and the money that you spend with Hamilton Wealth Advisors, we're going to be accountable and available to you, that you can check up on us. We're not hiding. We're not running a Ponzi scheme or any of those matters, but we are present. We're in the city. We're easily accessible. You can find us. You can find me at the barbershop, and I can tell you where Mr. Hamilton and his offices are as well. We're not going to run away from you, so you can know what's going on. So you don't have to deal with the mistrust. You can trust us, not because of us, but you can trust us because of the God that we serve. So if you pray and trust God, then let God vet us, right? And if you don't want to trust us, as we said in previous episodes, contact somebody.
Yes.
If you don't come to see Hamilton Wealth Advisors for your wealth management and advisement, and to find out about the proper life insurance that you need for your family, contact a reputable agent that God will lead you to, that you can trust. Because that's what we want here. Is we want you to do business with Hamilton Wealth Advisors. We want you to be a member of New Grace Covenant Church, that I can be your pastor and Wilbur can be, and his company can be your financial advisors. But ultimately, we just want you to have proper advisement. We want you to have the right community for your soul and your faith. So whether you deal with us or not, at least listen to us to go to where you need to go. Ask God, who is it that you need to do business with, to make sure that you have what you need. So if you don't have insurance, contact somebody. If you do have insurance, let's have a conversation to make sure that there are no gaps in where your insurance is and where your insurance needs to be. And we'll discuss a little bit more about that when we come back after this commercial break. Welcome back to Closing Gap Podcast, Truth About Wealth, where our show today is entitled Building Bridges. So we left off the last segment talking about making sure that the people understand that we're not trying to condemn anybody. Yeah, we want you to feel convicted. We want you to have, an understanding that something needs to be done. That, faith without works is dead. So we need to put in some work to make sure that we have our finances aligned correctly, so that we can build a proper bridge to get us from where we are to where we desire to be, from where our family is to where we desire our family to be. And as you were stating from your professional perspective, is that life insurance is a great vehicle
Yes.
to utilize to do that. But it's important that if people don't have it, that they get it, and if they do have it, to have a proper assessment of where they are to see if there are any gaps in it. And so essentially what we're saying is, as Hosea 4:6 says, my people perish for a lack of knowledge.
Yes.
And our goal here is to give you the knowledge that you need so that you can make an informed decision. And in all things that you get, the Bible also says, when you get wisdom, get an understanding. And I want to let everybody know that that's, well, I'll let you tell them that that's essentially what you know what I'm saying, what you do, as a financial advisor. And but I'll say this in prefacing your next statements, is that sometimes when I encounter some people, they want us to be a little more specific, right? But what I need everybody to understand is that we can't be as specific and tell you an exact number of what you are going to achieve. We can't do that, right? And the reason being is because everybody's situation is different. Also, Wilbert being, having all of his proper licensing, then we don't need any flags or any, trouble with the FTC. That's number one, right? We don't need any of that to happen. So you can't tell you over the air, hey, if you do this, this is exactly what you're going to do. No, we're trying to give you the tools to build a bridge. And then when we sit down, and talk, then we can go into the specifics. Yes. Once you become a client. So what we do here, yes, it may sound generic, but trust us, we can go more specific with you once we have the proper sit downs and the conversations.
Absolutely, absolutely. You can't tell them how to bake the cake. Otherwise, they try to bake without you and wonder why the cake don't come out the same. So, it's one of those things. And people always ask the question, and unfortunately, there's a lot of conversation in our community all the time about what's the best kind of insurance. Is it term? Is it whole life? Is it IUL? Is it this? Is that? And everybody got their opinion.
Yeah.
And I always tell people the kind is the best, the kind you got when you die, because all of them gonna pay the same. It don't matter which one it is, as long as you got some when you die, that's the best kind to have. So there's obviously different types of insurance. They all serve different roles and responsibilities, having different features, different pros and cons to each one. And I like to categorize them obviously into two typical categories. You have term insurance, you have permanent insurance. Term insurance is what we call temporary coverage. It's temporary coverage for a set period of time. Maybe, a lot of times people on the job have what's called annual renewable term, which means you got the insurance as a perk of the job. Every year as you get, older, it goes up in price, but you get it every year, like clockwork, no problem. You don't have to qualify for it. You get it under the group benefit. Then there's, those set term policies. That may be your 10, 20, 30-year policy. Anybody who's bought a home has gotten the term quote in the mail, or even maybe in the process of doing your closing, or they'll say, hey, you know what? Have you took out any mortgage protection insurance to cover your home? So in the event that you pass away, we'll pay off the mortgage. Well, all it is a term insurance policy. That's all it is. That particular situation. It's just being utilized for the specific purpose of mortgage protection.
Yeah.
But essentially it's just a term policy. It just, it's a 30-year term policy because your mortgage is usually 30 years. But there's also 15-year term policies. There's 10-year, there's 20 years. So there's different, time periods that have for term policies. And then there's what you call your permanent policies. Those are, various types of permanent policies. There's, the most common people are, it's vital expense, the whole life. Then you have, of course, your universal life. There's variable life that's tied directly to mutual funds and investments. There's, IULs, index universal life, tied to stock market indexes. So there's different types of insurance that serve different purposes. But the biggest thing to understand about a permanent policy is if it's structured properly, and this is why I'm saying if, because if it was a fifth, we know. But we got to understand, if a permanent policy is structured properly, it will last for your entire lifetime. They're naturally built and designed to carry you out to 120 years of age if funded properly. But you have people that, are in the business of just making sales sometimes. And, sometimes people want to cut corners and they want to make certain things affordable in situations where they may not be as affordable. So if the permanent policy that's going to carry out to 120 years of age costs $100, but the salesman say, you know what, if you pay 80, it'll still work. It'll still do the same thing. Well, now all of a sudden, it's not going to carry you out to 120. It may carry you out to today's 90, which means if you live past 90, that policy may not last or still be there. It may not still have any relevant value to it because it will expire prematurely because you didn't properly fund the policy. So I always tell people, because unfortunately, I think products get a bad rap, whether it's term insurance, whether it's permanent insurance, that's IUL, VUL, whole life, where all of these policies have a purpose. And none of these products are bad products. But anything misused can cause a problem. Anything that's not utilized properly can be problematic. So, too much of anything can be a bad thing. So I like to tell people is don't blame the product. There was just bad product placement by the person that you were working with, because, did you vet that person to see were they a true fiduciary, were they a true financial professional, or, did they start selling insurance last week? I'm not going to call no names, but there are these insurance companies out there that'll hire you and you can have another job and be doing something else on the side. But now all of a sudden, these people are giving you financial advice. They was working with you last week. And the very next week, now they're selling you insurance and giving you financial advice. Now, you purchase a policy from them, not understanding that they don't understand. And all of a sudden, it doesn't work out the way you thought. Well, whose fault was that? Did you do your due diligence? Why did you take advice from someone has the same education as you on this particular topic, because they work at the same job as you during the day? So I'm just a proponent of making sure you're seeking out professional information from a professional. Someone who does this for a living. Not just does this for a living sometime, but does this for a living all the time. And I'm a proponent of going a step further, making sure that if they don't pay their mortgage, which is most people's most important bill, is their mortgage. That mortgage usually comes above all else. If they don't pay their mortgage by practicing in that particular area, then that's probably not a professional that you want to work with. Because if I pay my mortgage doing something else, and I'm doing this, what is my time and energy going into? Probably going into something else. So we got to be better about that as a community, making sure we're getting professional advice from professional people. So, but back to the regular set program. So understanding, these types of insurance policies, the people always ask me, Mr. Hamilton, which one's the best one? Is it term? Is it permanent? I'm like, well, what can you afford? What does your situation call for? Let's do some evaluations. You would say, let's sit down in the office and we'll have a conversation. But there's two ways of giving people a good example as to what these products tend to represent and kind of how to categorize so you can gauge which one you feel like may be in your best interest. There's two houses. And we all understand as adults, there's multiple ways of getting inside a house. We can go to the process of renting a house, or we can go the way of buying the house. Either way, we get in the house, right? Now, if we rent this house, there's terms and conditions that come along with renting this house. Usually there's a set amount of time we get to live in that house. There's a lease agreement, right? That says how long we can stay here. And let's just say that lease agreement is a year. And usually before that lease ends, we get a letter. And they say, you know what? Your lease is about to end. We here at the apartment complex, we here as the landlord, we've decided to increase rent. And you have one or two options. Either you can pay the increased rent, or you can move. Those are your two choices. Now, there was a couple things you liked about renting the house. You know, it was a set payment that you knew what it was going to be for a given period of time. So you liked the fact that it was constant.
Right.
You know, it was a little bit more affordable for you, being able to rent it based on the time you were going to have it. So a little more cost effective.
Right.
You know, but at no point in time did you have the option to actually own that property. You were operating on borrowed time. And then there's the other way of actually getting into this house. You know, it's the way of going about, you know, purchasing a home. If anyone who's done the purchase of a home, you've probably done the way of actually renting a house. Most people have done both. You rented an apartment at some point in time in your life, and you probably bought a home. And you understand that the process of getting a home was a little bit more detailed than it was renting that apartment.
Yeah.
You know, when it came to, you know, trying to buy the home, you had to not just produce your pay stubs, but they probably asked for your tax returns.
That's right.
They probably asked for some bank statements.
Correct.
You know, they asked for all of your financial information. If you're a business owner, they ask for your profit and loss statement, your accounts receivables, they ask for, you know, all of your information, you know, that goes along with the purchase of a home. You know, and the same thing holds true when it comes to getting permanent insurance. When you get permanent insurance, most people like it because it is constant, but not for a set period of time, but actually for the rest of your life, as opposed to that term, which just going to be good for a certain number of years. So you have to ask yourself, question number one, do you want to be in your 60s having to reset your insurance? Some do, some don't. You know, one of the things that most people like about going down the way of actually purchasing that home is that you get a chance to build a little cash value, the equity that comes with having a home. And, you know, we all like to have some equity.
Right.
We've all enjoyed the housing market, you know, going up in value. Now, the people that's ready to buy may not be enjoying this, people who already own. But the fact that if you own a home, you are enjoying the process of your value of your home constantly appreciating, which is a good thing, you know, because at some particular point in time, you may decide to access some of the equity back out of this home. Now, the great thing about accessing equity back out of your home is that equity is also tax-free, much in the same way that accessing the cash value equity out of your life insurance would be. And then probably the biggest thing one of the things that go along with actually the purchase of a home is actually at some particular point in time in the future, I now own this home and I don't actually have to make any more payments. It's mine. It is matured. It is fully developed. I own it. So I can now utilize this how I see fit. I can do whatever I want to do to my house. So I have an option to where I can look at it and say, okay, well, term insurance is like renting the house. Permanent insurance is buying the house. Which one is more beneficial? Now, does it cost a little bit more to buy the home? It does, because it comes with a down payment and some closing costs. So usually the monthly note is a little bit more expensive.
Right.
But if you've done the numbers, a lot of times, if you get the insurance early enough in life, you'll find out the gap is not as big as you think. Because how many times have people gone out, and I'm pretty sure the realtors have said this over and over again, it's not as big of a difference in renting as it is in owning.
Yeah.
The difference is the process because of the benefits involved. And that's where we as a community got to start understanding, well, if I have to go through one or two more steps in order to get it, it's probably because it's more valuable to me on the back end. Because in life, we do understand you do get what you pay for.
Yeah.
You know, what comes fast, gonna go quick. But what's earned hard, gonna stay long.
Yeah.
So we gotta understand that, and that holds true even when it comes to insurance. So if we have that permanent policy, some of the benefits of it is that when I generate that cash value equity, let's just say I miss a few payments. You know, my financial situation changes. Well, guess what? because I have cash value, my policy will maintain itself and pay for itself. Let's just say I want to use it to pull some cash out to pay for a down payment on another home, or to give to my kids for their college education, or to donate to my son or daughter to help them buy their home. I now have access to some cash that I wouldn't have had, because people always say, unfortunately, that term is the cheapest kind of insurance. And I can't 100% agree with that.
Okay.
And the reason I say that is because anything you invest in and yields you no return is never a great investment, is it? So how can that be the greatest investment? Now, because they'll tell you, we buy term and we invest the difference. Well, on far too many occasions, the people that's selling the term ain't teaching people how to invest the difference.
That's the difference, yeah.
Because most of these people are not contracted and licensed to educate you on that. The problem with it, or a lot of times, is they haven't even properly evaluated your situation to even tell you how much insurance you need. Because this is the real.
Okay.
And I'm just gonna go ahead and give you some real game. We'll go ahead. We'll call a spade a spade.
Drop it.
A lot of people give the theoretical message that you buy a term and invest the difference, and in theory is amazing, but not understanding where that message comes from and who was intended for is what causes the most problem in our community. Because we buy more term policies than anybody, but by the numbers, over 98% of term policies never pay out. And people, well, why? Why do almost 100% of term policies never pay out? Well, the reason why they never pay out is because they sell them to you when you're young. You're 30 years old, y'all see the commercials on TV. Get $1 million in insurance for $19.99. You get it at 30. That's great. Never talk to you about building a financial plan. Never talk to you about investing, doing all these things that are necessary while you have this term policy. Because at some particular point in time in the future, when you turn 60 and that 30-year term policy is expiring, now, what has happened to the cost of that same coverage of insurance? Inflation, age, health, all these things have changed, right? So we need to understand that we live in a world where you're going to pay now, you're going to pay later.
Yeah.
And the term insurance companies have understood, and they bet to say, you know what? We know that we live in a country where people are going to put off the day what they can do tomorrow. And we're going to wait. And they're going to have to turn around and purchase this insurance later on down the road. Now, you get to be 60 years of age, all of a sudden you realize that same $1 million of coverage at 60 is going to cost you every bit of $1,000 a month or more. Now, financially, have you put yourself in a position to now afford the $1,000 a month or more for that same policy? Now, a lot of times it's not even about affordability.
Yeah.
It's about the mental makeup of the person. Because if I've been paying $19.99 for 30 years, am I gonna see the value in paying $1,000 a month now? No. Psychologically, I can't rationalize that in my mind. Now, I should, because if the benefit is $1 million on the back end, I should say, okay, well, let me do the math and the numbers and see, does this make sense? And that's where a lot of people that say buy a term, invest the difference, like, well, you should have been investing the whole way. And then theoretically, you're going to be in a situation where now you good at 65. Well, see, there was a lot of people that did that. And then in 2008 stock market crash hit. And they had $1 million invested. And that $1 million dropped down to $500,000. So now they 60, 65, they got no life insurance, and the investment just got cut in half. So now the income that they were living on got cut in half. And the gift they thought they was going to leave has now got cut in half. So what is realistically happening is that there is no gift to be given, because now you got to utilize what you have to maintain your own lifestyle. That's where prior planning prevents poor performance. That's where theoretically the message made sense. But in reality, on far too many occasions, when you're doing it yourself and don't have the proper planning that we talk about, and Hamilton Wealth Advisor, well, you got to have the investment plan, the estate plan, the tax plan, the long-term care plan, all these things put together to make sure that those I's are dotted and T's are crossed, to where we convert that policy either earlier, or we understand we need to purchase a new policy, or we make sure the investments are in place where now we've grown the assets to the point where we don't need it. Now we're in a situation where we can move forward and put ourselves in a better situation. But when we know better, we do better. And like you just said out of Hosea, people perish through the lack of knowledge. Don't let that be you. See you next time.
So you either build a bridge or you're gonna be living under one.